Hello, I'm Claire Detels, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a celebration of American democracy in music. I'm here at El Pueblito Methodist Church in Taos, and I'm very grateful for the assistance of Sherry Lyon, who is the minister here, and of her husband Ron Dykusen, who is our sound and video guy. And we're bringing this to you with the support of our congregation here. But because it's a Zoom and or YouTube concert, we have outreach all over the world. That's, I guess, the great thing about quarantine. Well, we've been through a very difficult year, and I'm really excited to be able to take a breather here and celebrate American democracy with some of the works that I love best, that I believe represent the best parts of the democracy. And I want to start right off with a favorite tune of Barbara Streisand, of all people. Happy Days Are Here Again. She made it a signature tune starting in the late 1950s, but it really goes all the way back to 1929. And it was FDR's campaign song in 1932. I'm going to borrow some from Barbara's arrangement, but other than that, it's going to be real informal here. The whole concert will be. You'll notice I'm using music. I'm a church musician, so I learn a lot of music. Can't keep it all in my head. Well, I wish I could borrow Barbara's voice too, and have a mic and have it all, streamlined and so forth. But it's just us friends here, and so I want to share with you Happy Days Are Here Again. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again. All together, shout it now. There's no one who can doubt it now. We will tell the world about it now. Happy days are here again. Your cares and your troubles are gone. There'll be no more from now on. From now on. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy times, happy nights, happy days are here again. Okay, moving on. We get to the main part of the concert, and I am starting this first theme as E pluribus unum, out of many one. And to illustrate that theme, I'm playing a beautiful piece called Ellis Island by the experimental composer Meredith Monk. Meredith Monk's forebears were Russian Jewish immigrants, and she had a very powerful feeling about immigration, and she put it all in this 1981 film, which part of her work is multi-artistic, multimedia. So you can actually see the whole film on YouTube, and it is stunning. It has a lot of old footage of Ellis Island immigrants coming in with this music I'm about to play, playing along. And there's the Statue of Liberty. And I think immigration is such an important part of the American story. and our search for a more perfect union in which everyone has a voice. So here is Ellis Island. Next, I want to play a piece by Ludwig van Beethoven in his 250th anniversary, and it is Variations on God Save the King, which we also know as My Country 'Tis of Thee and America. My theme here is our European classical roots, which played a very important part in the development of, American democracy, since our forefathers were English colonists, most of them, and in American classical music. And if you went to visit Thomas Jefferson's library, you would still be able to see that he had European classical instruments and music in his library. So playing Beethoven in this context is, I think, very fitting. I want to also mention that as institutions grew up, music institutions in the United States, they used European instruments and orchestras and opera, and they played a lot of European music. Also in 1848, after the failure of the German Revolution, many German immigrants came here and brought with them their love of piano music, of orchestras and opera. And I'm going to play Scott Joplin a little bit later. His first piano teacher was a German immigrant. Okay, so this is quintessential Beethoven piece, demanding, full of drama, all in these 7 variations of this very familiar tune. My next theme is called Roots in the Delta, Great African American Pianists and Composers. And most scholars of American music would agree that the contribution made by African Americans to American music and from there to music all over the world is the greatest of any. And this extends well before emancipation because there were famous pianists traveling the South who were given freedom to play concerts and collect money. But it really, of course, explodes after emancipation, and the place it explodes the most is in the area of the Greater Delta, where the greatest African American population was. Yes, it was Jim Crow time, and there was lots of prejudice, but many African American pianists and other musicians made it through that and became extremely famous and influential. And I want to start by playing Scott Joplin's rag, Solace, from 1907, one of his later rags. He was discovered early in his life in Texarkana when his mother was cleaning a house and he played with the piano. And his incredible skill was increasingly noticed. He got set up with the best teachers. Later, he became a teacher himself. He was featured at the 1893 World's Fair exposition in Chicago, and ragtime just took off from there. But Joplin's ambitions were always to make beautiful music and to make opera as well as ragtime, and all of his music, his rags contain the instruction not too fast. So there is great harmonic beauty, and you can tell that he has the influence from his German piano teacher of the European classical music as well. Next, in this section of Roots in the Delta, I want to play two beautiful pieces by William Grant Still, who's often known to be the dean of African American composers and was much celebrated by writers in the Harlem Renaissance as representing the great artistic aspirations of Black people at that time. And he won many awards and received many firsts. First opera produced by a major American opera company, for instance. He ended up moving from Arkansas, where I studied his materials and special collections at the university I taught in for a long time. And he moved on to New York to do blues with W.C. Handy. And his music is very much infused with the blues, and also has a beautiful lyric, operatic side, and an experimental harmonic side. So I hope you enjoy these two pieces. I'll play them one right after the other. The first is Prelude, and the second is called Woven Silver. last in this section, you really must celebrate the great African American tradition of jazz. Jazz is a wonderful, unique art form that rose out of the blues and out of ragtime and some of these other African American idioms. And it is a quintessentially democratic genre because it takes a tune, and if you're in a jazz band, it passes it around to everyone in that band, and they all play it in their own individual way, and they come together at the end. Now, I'm not a whole band, but I am going to play a short little solo in the middle of this piece by one of the greatest jazz pianists and composers, Duke Ellington. He grew up in Washington, D.C., was thoroughly trained in European classical style, as well as learning in the clubs, and later very famous in Harlem. And you can hear the Chopin and the Debussy in this particular piece. It's one of his earliest compositions. It's Sophisticated Lady from 1932. Next on the program, I wanted to feature a real American original composer, Charles Ives, one of the most original composers, really, of any country and time. He is known for doing all kinds of crazy things: polytonality, clusters, incredible dissonances, collages of a whole lot of different ideas that have symbolic meaning. He actually was, after training in Boston at an early American conservatory there, ended up becoming an insurance salesman and having his music completely ignored for about 20 years. During that 20 years, he wrote this wonderful sonata, the Concord Sonata, the second movement of which I'm going to play. It's called the Alcotts, of course, a reference to Louisa May Alcott and her father, her whole family. They were abolitionists. They were friends with the transcendentalist writers, and Charles Ives is drawing on some of this tradition of them in this piece. By the way, although he wrote this in 1920, he revised it in 1941, at which point he was being discovered as the great American composer. So I'm very happy to be able to include this. I think he interpreted the novel Little Women very beautifully. It starts and it includes various passages that sound like the out-of-tune piano that Beth had to play with notes that were missing. There are folk tunes, hymn-sounding tunes. There are strange flights of fancy that suggest to us Joe. And above all, oh, and there's a marriage motif, because of course that was what women were expected to do, including Joe. And there also is this use of Beethoven's Fate motif from the Fifth Symphony. Da, 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 da. So altogether, there are a lot of different suggestions and a sort of loving rendition of what these women are facing and what their culture is facing in the wake of the Civil War and the Reconstruction period. And now we come to the final section of this program, and I have so enjoyed putting this together, and I'm so happy to share it with you. I call this section, We Shall Overcome. Obviously, it's a reference to the great marching song of Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Anthem. And that song has a long history. It started as a labor protest song in the late 30s and 40s, and it has roots in the text of a gospel song from the early part of the century, and also from a spiritual called Many Thousand Gone, the latter of which is not well recognized at all, but when you hear the melody of this spiritual, you will see that is in fact an important source for it. And the text to this spiritual is no more auction block for me, no more auction block for me, many thousand gone. There are many verses that refer to other aspects of slavery. This was first reported by a Harper's Bazaar magazine reporter who heard it sung by a black Civil War regiment in 1863. Later, it became one of the spirituals that was featured by the Fisk Jubilee Singers as they toured Europe to raise money for the university. And it was heard by African-British composer Samuel Coleridge Taylor in 1899 in London. And he was so impressed with these spirituals that he set a number of them, and also African folk songs, as grand piano pieces, Lisztian style, heroic. It moves me a great deal, and I hope it will move you, that this spiritual receives this Lisztian heroic treatment. So I'd like to close this program with a quadlibet on Bill Evans' piece called Peace Piece. A quadlibet is a kind of musical piece that jumbles many tunes together. And when I first decided on closing with this Bill Evans based piece, I thought I would just join it with We Shall Overcome. But then I started to get carried away and some other tunes started to come to me. And if you're out there and you feel like clapping along or singing along, I would certainly welcome it. I'd also like to thank again El Pueblito. And if you enjoyed the concert and if you would like to donate to El Pueblito, there's a web address on the screen below. Thanks so much and happy Thanksgiving weekend to everyone.